Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to the Rangers reviews. What's it called? Adam Tactics Show, Rangers Review Extra, where we get to talk about Rangers and tactics. We thought we were going to be speaking potentially about a Rangers Old Firm win, but that'll have to wait. We're going to be speaking about a cup final, which has had normally Old Firm games. Adam, have a lot of talking points. I think this it's we're recording on Wednesday, and it's very much still in full flow. But we're just going to talk about the football, the good, the bad, the in between, and everything else. So first and foremost, Adam, how are you? And yeah, maybe just give me your initial thoughts on the game, because I think there's a risk that there's quite a lot of outcome bias here. You know, in talk and doing a video about what Rangers could have done better, because if they win a penalty shootout, which we're not going to discuss, then suddenly Clement's turned the biggest of corners, and he's neutralised Celtic a bit. But obviously Rangers don't get that good fortune, preparation, whatever you want to put a penalty shootout down to, and lose the game. But yeah, maybe just give me your overall thoughts on it, having watched it and a little bit of time since.
Yeah, I think it is a shame sometimes when you've got the horrendous refereeing decisions and then the sort of lottery of the penalty piece, because it does
Yeah,
sort of make the performance a little bit, not a sideshow, but it sort of dampens people's discussion about the game, which I think, taking all of the old firm anxieties out of it, was a pretty interesting game. It certainly wasn't boring. The technical quality of both teams, we'll come on to, could have been a lot better.
yeah,
Rangers in terms of keeping the ball in particular, but you can't say it wasn't entertaining if you were a neutral. So yeah, I guess there's that. For me, yeah, it's tough. You don't want to overplay things, and you don't want to downplay things. You don't want to say, "Oh, well done, you got 10 shots on target. Good for you, Rangers. Congratulations," in a kind of patronising way. But at the same time, you have to recognise improvement. You have to see what is starting to show. I said for a while
yeah,
that this tactical setup is not for me at all. It's too wide open. We don't have the players for it, and there's going to be gaps. I still stand by that, because I think the differences that we've seen in the last couple of weeks are different players implementing these tactics. There are It is a fine line what comes first, the good player or the good tactics, and I think good players can hide a multitude of sins, and the opposite is true as well. So for me, there has been an uptick in performance, but I would be putting that mostly at the door of guys like Igaman, Danilo, Nico Raskin coming in and being the guy that everybody hoped he would be, albeit it's
yeah,
only been 6 weeks or so. So in a way, I'm kind of not surprised, because those three players are players that I've pinned my colours to the mast on for a while. That I think those three players would make a difference, and we're seeing that in the team. So yeah, that's a little bit muddled, because probably my thoughts on it are a little bit muddled, but I don't think there's been a huge tactical revolution. I think the main factor for me has been bringing in players who are more comfortable, more positive, more clinical at points, that look to get us playing in a different way, has seen us play
yeah,
a good bit better since that Nice game. So yeah, I think the game in isolation, I'm sure we'll dig into. I thought we were unlucky in some of the decisions, as we've said. I thought we were poor in some of our decisions, particularly um, from when we went 1-0 up until Celtic went 2-1. I've got a list here that I think I've got at least five
yeah,
technical errors, basic errors that Rangers have made, which some of which were capitalised on at the other end. So if you try and ignore the noise around the end of the game, and Desser's not taking a penalty, and the fact we should have had a penalty, all that sort of stuff, there's still that period there in the middle for me,
yeah.
15, 20 minutes either side of half time, where Rangers could have been out of sight and weren't, for their own issues. So that's the part that I'll probably focus on as well, but it doesn't mean that the
Yeah.
rest of it doesn't make a difference either.
Yeah, we'll get into it. I mean, I'd probably agree with you. I think Clement he's tended to, over his year in the job, even when he's not had players, he's stuck with the system. And you're probably now seeing a little bit of the benefit of the system being worked on. You see it for the first goal, more cohesion with when Rangers press, the individualism of Danilo and Hamza Igaman, the fact that they can take the ball in, Igaman in particular can dribble with the ball compared to someone like Dessers and And, Bayrami's pace for the first goal compared to someone like Tom Lawrence. I agree with you. These are all individual things. When Rangers have the ball, I think there is small tweaks to their system, but it's not like Clement's ripped everything up and
Yeah.
started again. The fact that Nico Raskin can cover a million miles in a game at the moment helps quite a lot. The fact that Bayrami can run away from his man for the first goal helps a lot. The fact that he's had options from the bench. All that to say, let's get into this. We're going to look at build-up play. We're going to look at Rangers in the final third, pressing structure, corners. I think that's it, and also why shots from range are bad. But that is a regular feature of our podcast. First and foremost, some stats for you, Adam. The XG was actually 2.09 to 1.16 in Rangers' favour. Obviously, that was pretty heavily weighted by the Bayrami chance into effectively an open goal. I think that was a 0.65 or something like that. Some possession stats for you. Jack Butland played. Well, I'll actually. You don't know this, I don't think. So I'll quiz you. Jack Butland played 25 passes. How many of those do you think were long passes?
20.
Okay, 18. So close, which
Okay.
is 72%. Kasper Schmeichel played 67 passes. How many of those do you think were long passes?
How many did he play? Sorry, how many did you say there?
He played 67 passes. How many were long?
20 again, I would say.
Only 8, so
Well, there you go.
12%. So I'm not, styles make fights. I'm not saying one is inherently bad, although I think that Rangers still are a bit reliant on going direct. Although I would describe this game as Rangers spent more time attacking into space because their approach probably worked better on the day, even if there is issues
Yep.
with it. However, when Celtic got into space, they looked a better team in it. So I'm thinking of, even though again couldn't trip for Diomande in the lead up to the third goal, Celtic work a shooting cut back opportunity from there much better than Rangers do on multiple occasions, even though they spent more time attacking in space. So let's get into the good of the build up. What is a real pattern that Rangers try to do in these games? And we've seen this really since Postecoglou. This is like Gio Postecoglou kind of chat as well. And there was times definitely in the first half where Butland was going too direct for Clement's liking if you were watching the dugout. But when Rangers build-up worked well, they went to an angle first. So here in this example, this is the wide ball to James Tavernier from Jack Butland. Tavernier goes over the top, and because Rangers have gone vertical, they've got a 3v2. If you look at this reverse frame, you can see that it's a deliberate staggering of Cherney slightly deeper to pull Greg Taylor in. That means that the Celtic backline is diagonal. That means that there's more space for Rangers to play into. They can attack in a 3v2 structure. Hamza Egaman won a fair few second balls. Hadji picks up the second ball, but again, a theme of the day for Rangers when they got into these type of positions, it felt erratic rather than cohesive. And again, maybe that's just a little bit of the byproduct of how you get there. So the build-up worked well at some point, Adam, if I just play this through again, and they were able to fashion some good opportunities. I still think that this type of approach lacks probably a left winger to really take full advantage of it. But I guess you're mitigating the risk of you're not losing the ball in deep build-up areas, because Clement obviously thinks that he doesn't think the risk the reward is worth it of trying to play through Celtic's aggressive press in the first phase.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you took the words out of my mouth there. I don't have a problem with the directness, particularly in this game. I don't think, given where this Rangers team are, and given the qualities that we know Celtic have in the middle, I think going man for man with that and trying to play through, we don't have the players or the quality there or the experience to do that. So I don't have a big issue with going over. But I think, like you said, the issue that I've got is Rangers had 10 shots on target in this game. And if you are going over there and it is going to be rushed, you need to have people there that can take those chances. I would have went with Ridvan on the left-hand side. I'm not a fan of Hadji and Bayrami playing together. There's potentially an argument that I wouldn't play either of them. I would probably look to play Danilo behind Egaman and probably go for it, but I know that means we've got some issues elsewhere. So yeah, I think that is an issue. I've seen wildly varying opinions about how Hadji did in the game. I didn't think he was great at all. I have to say, I I thought it was a kind of bog standard Hadji performance. Bayrami, I didn't think was very good on Thursday night at all. I thought he was better in this game. The pressing aspect was really, really good. The quickness of him, I think there. But I think if you're playing those type of players and you're giving up what we spoke about there with pace, directness, even ability going back the way. If you're giving up some of those, if you're giving up some of those things to play, for all intents and purposes, two luxury players together. I know that's not quite accurate, but sort of two floaty number 10s. When the moment comes, they need to take those opportunities. If they're on the pitch because of their quality in the final third, they absolutely need to take that. And we'll come on and talk about the big issue, which is the 4v1. I guess I know Barami takes his opportunity and he does really, really well to gamble and get in the box to deal with the spell and get the goal. So that's fine. But there's a couple of other opportunities in the game that if you are playing these players for their final pass or their coolness in the final third and they don't do that, I think sometimes, particularly playing both of them, I think sometimes the sort of there's a net negative there in terms of what they offer off the ball, what they offer, pace to get in behind, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, mixed bag.
So I think that it's interesting because this approach, I agree, especially if you're playing for second balls quite a lot. I think in an ideal world, in an attacking sense, you have Igaman where Hadji is here, as we've seen him rotate out wide to the left when he's played along Danilo, and Danilo is your central striker. I actually thought Hadji did all right going back the way. When we get to the second half, we'll speak about what I thought was probably the one big tactical issue that Clement didn't really get right from the touchline. But again, there's some mitigating circumstances around it. So I thought Hadji did well with his discipline and his legs going back the way. But I agree with you. You need a Cherney's a good example here, right? Because I don't think Cherney had a great game from memory, but he produces that moment of outstanding quality for the third goal, right? So he loses the ball. So if we look at the bad part of Rangers' build-up play, which we'll get into just now, this is the lead up to Maeda's second goal. Maeda's goal, which is the second goal in the day. And Cherney has a bad part to play in this because he's not great at winning second balls alongside Hadji. So you lose out there, and I agree you probably need then more on the opposite side of play, which you maybe get from Cherney on the day, but not Hadji. Ridvan will come on to because I think that substitution should have come earlier for Chefty because of his yellow card before half time. But if we rotate it back, so Rangers should have gone 1-0 up, 2-0 up because of that 4v1 opportunity. Celtic did also have that kind of 1v1, 2v1 moment where Kuhn, instead of squaring it to, I think it's Kyogo through on goal, he tries to go around Butland. So it's important to mention that we're looking at this more critically from a Rangers performance point of view as opposed to across the board. But the games just went 1-1 here. Again, we're going to look at the corner. Butland goes long. Now, it's a bad kick, Adam. This is the negative of Rangers' approach because you need to take the sting out of the game here. You need to ideally get the ball at the pitch and spend a bit of a time in possession. But this is when Celtic, I think, know that they can turn the screw on Rangers because they're too reliant on going long. And if we look at the build-up to this goal, although it's Raskin makes a mistake for Maida and Balogun probably a bit culpable as well. But it's also Cherney that's loose to the second ball. Bayrami, I think, did a pretty good job just sitting on McGregor. And again, we'll look at that. And he had the pace to get away from individuals. But this is a kind of when you're playing almost a second ball approach at points, to your point in this situation, before you get to the Raskin mistake, before you talk about the kind of, you're putting the ball up for grabs when you put it that high, so this type of thing is going to happen. I guess that reaffirms what you're saying in terms of the profiles off the ball in the final third, yeah?
100%. Yeah, if you're going to play long, I don't have an issue with it, but you need to make sure you're playing it into areas that if there is a second ball, there's not going to be a huge amount of issue. The Cherney piece, yeah, I get it, but again, like we said, that it's maybe not his game, so it's tough for me. For me, I blamed Balogun at the time, but I don't have any blame for Balogun here. I think that the Raskin header for me is not great at all. I'm not quite sure what else he could do, I have to say. But
and is there an argument, Adam, that, sorry to cut in, but is there an argument, because I know he's culpable for a couple of goals, is there an argument that he just had to cover he feels like he's plugging gaps so much across the whole team that again, is this not just a component of what Clement's asking them to do?
Yep, 100%. And that's the thing, that noise about us being wide open in midfield has disappeared because Nico Raskin and Diamandi are running and covering the space that 3 players should be in. So that issue hasn't gone away. It's just that we've got 2 players in there who are doing more than they really should be, because we're trying to compensate and put more players further forward. So yeah, 100%. It's easy looking at that still to say bring it down and pass it to Tavernier. That's not how things
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, of course.
and it's a looping ball. He's sort of turned back. He's off balance. He might not even have the body position to get it back to Butland himself. So I'm not quite sure really what else he could have done there, but it never worked out. Even getting it to Balogun and Balogun trying to head it over again. I don't know. But yeah, for me, that's the issue there. Whether it's Raskin is 100% to blame, that's the ball that causes the main issue for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and you need obviously Maeda's a player who's is just a really good presser of the ball, so you need to compensate for that. But the initial pass that goes up from Butland, I think McGregor wins. He misses the initial header and then wins the second ball, which I think if you're looking at it correctly, that's
Because that disrupts your shape as well, doesn't it? In a
yeah,
way, him missing that and then getting the second ball, you're a bit out of
yeah,
sorts, and it creates a bit of confusion. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, right. Let's look at the goods of Rangers pressing because obviously the first goal comes from that. Rangers just kind of sat by Rami on Callum McGregor, and normally they've done a few different things, but generally they've kind of stuck to that seesaw press. Where if you imagine Bayrami and Igaman in this situation, before it's been Lawrence and Dessers, neither of whom have the dynamism or the legs or the pace, whatever you want to call it. I think they're certainly not together to carry that function. But instead of Igaman and Bayrami kind of seesawing between the centre backs and covering McGregor and their cover shadow behind them, which then allows McGregor to just get those third man passes off a winger or Hatate or combine. Because Bayrami was just sitting there, it put more of an emphasis on the centre backs to try and break lines or find a direct ball. And Rangers won it back quite well on a few occasions. The moment where Leon Balogun's running through on goal, which we'll look at later and should play in Igaman, that comes from a similar situation. The idea being that Trusty and Carter Vickers, while they might be able to run forward, if they do run forward and they leave it, there's a huge gap, which you see
Yeah.
for the Igaman chance. And obviously, the it's like the lesser of two evils. You'd probably rather have that and the passing options marked up as opposed to McGregor being free. What happened then was Greg Taylor rotated in at times, and I think he's pretty good at this generally, but he didn't have a great first half on the ball. This is a key moment for me with Rangers press and structure. What you've seen in the past is Václav Černý follows Greg Taylor, and Rangers, when they're not being aggressive, when they're sat in this kind of middle block, and we discussed this after the 3-0 game, Adam, they get manipulated too easily. So
Yeah.
Černý follows Taylor in there, a passing lane open, into the left wing, and suddenly Celtic are away. But because Rangers had this kind of mix between at times they were zonal, at times they were a man for man in their pressing, I thought it looked a lot better. Obviously, the goal was made by Diomande and Diomande's pressing because then Diomande can jump up from Hatate. It's the timing of the action and it's done together, which I think, again, Clement will look at that and he'll be pleased because he'll say this is an ideal working, this is a team pressing in unison.
Yep.
Igaman jumps in, you can see Hadji at the far end of your picture jumps up. Bayrami intercepts the ball, and again, he's got the pace to get away from his marker in this situation, which Rangers haven't had in that number 10 position for a while. So this was a well-executed move, and I thought, again, that mix between going zonal at points, man for man at others, Diomande reading the cue, Bayrami jumping at the same time, that's definitely progress off the ball for Rangers in this fixture, isn't it?
100%. The stills that we spoke about in the 3-0 game.
Oof.
If you were to go back to the trusty pass image
Yeah,
here, it's night and day. There's
yeah,
still the 3 Celtic players, McGregor, Hatate, and Taylor, are still goal side of our players, but there's a lot less distance there. And you're also, again, coming back to that point, you're also playing players that are quicker.
yeah,
So your Igaman is sort of doing that kind of cover shadow over to Carter Vickers, or passing
yeah,
lane block, if you like. But they're just a bit quicker off their heels. Diomande being one, and they're able to jump up. Whereas in the other games, it might have been, like you said, Černý trying to follow, and then they get passed round. So I like that. And then the second image that you showed there, I think it does sum it up perfectly, because he doesn't have an option. He can't really go anywhere. He's not right-footed.
yeah,
So he's not going to ping the middle image. He's not going to
yeah.
ping that ball out over to Carter Vickers. So I think that works really, really well.
Yeah, it's kind of trying to trap him at the right moment because
Yeah.
that's the only way he can really go. So yeah, okay, let's talk about the bad. The two negatives for me watching the game back, Adam. One of which you can kind of see it. It's just after this move. I've not actually got the image, but by Rami and Igaman made a bit of a meal of it from this position. Now I think Igaman's still working on his runs, and he's got so much to his game. It feels unfair to criticize him because of how impressive his announcement's been. I can rarely remember a player who's been out in the not out in the cold, but you know what I mean. He's not been making an impact, and suddenly is one of your key players. But that is Rangers runs in the final third. Rangers kind of clarity in the final third. And from here, it took, if memory serves me, a little bit of luck for Igaman, who takes the first shot. It's deflected back into his path, which allows him the second shot before Bayrami then goes and scores. So you're relying on a bit of good fortune as opposed to just, a well-worked move between the two or a good initial pass, a good initial run. I think those are the details that maybe betrayed Rangers a little bit on the day. The other thing before we get into stills of the final third in that 4v1 moment, Adam, is I think if you're criticising Clement, and I'd be interested to know what you think on this, is that Chefty should have come off at half time. Now, I'm a big Chefty fan. Everyone knows I'm a big Chefty fan. And I think he's been brilliant, really, since he came into the team. He's made few defensive errors. He's made a few, but he's 20 years
Yeah.
old. He's younger than Robbie Fraser. People forget that. The yellow card changed it for me. Nicholas Kuhn had 6 attempted dribbles in the first half, and he only had one successful. Only one of those were successful. In the first 15 minutes of the second half, he had 3 out of 3, which I think is pretty descriptive. And although Celtic don't score down the right-hand side, they kind of turn the dial there. They earn the corner from which they equalise the game. And because Sheffield was in that yellow card, you could tell he was thinking about it, as he should, because you're better being careful than putting your team down to 10 men. The game became more stretched. And I think Raskin was still covering him. But if you look at Kuhn's dribbles in the first half, quite often Jeffrey was getting a bit of protection ahead of him. So rather than getting protection, he was getting covered. I think that then bringing Ridvan on when the game is 2-1 is a little reactive, although, as we'll come on to, Rangers still have that 4v1 moment when the game is 1-0. So what do you make of that? Is that hindsight analysis saying that Clement should have done something when, again, if his players finish that 4v1, you're saying, well done for not making a defensive change at the break, well done for not changing things. And then you can bring Ridvan on ahead of Chefty and maybe keep things a bit tighter there. And so, do you know what I mean? Am I being a bit revisionist, or I've made too long a point? I'll put it back to you. Take me out of here.
Yeah, I'm famed for rambling anyway, so I wouldn't worry about it. But yeah, I think maybe a little bit. I think it's an easier one to say. Ridvan has his own issue for the third the third goal as well. So I don't know. I I did feel one more tackle for Shefty and he would have been off, I think, anyway.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, I can just about understand it there. If I'm not mistaken, the lead up to the first goal, I think, is a Jeffy issue, isn't it? And we end up defending it for a corner. So yeah, I can see both sides of it. I sort of get what you mean. But what I would say is I think we lost a fair bit of attacking intent and physicality down that left hand side when he went off, because Ridvan and Hadji doesn't really give you much of that. So I'd say there's an issue on the goal, our goal.
Yes.
Maybe I'm just trying to be a bit. Maybe I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I wondered if that was a deliberate. I wondered if that was a deliberate action by Egaman. I'm not. I don't. It doesn't quite look like it was an actual shot to me. It looked like maybe just maybe like a misstep. I don't know if it's deliberate or not. I don't want to go over the top. But the one thing it did do is sent Carter Vickers flying. He'd already committed. He'd already committed, and there was the space there to take the shot. So I think that's something that might be pertinent when we talk about that 4v1, in terms of maybe something that Bayrami could have done similar in the box. But yeah, I'm not too sure on that one. I think at the time, and having walked it back, I didn't immediately think he had made a mess of it and got lucky with it. But either way, like you said, like we said with the McGregor piece earlier on, reacting to something is sometimes the best way, because you can catch the opponent off guard, and I think Egaman definitely did that. The shot was decent, not a lot of backlift on it, but a good amount of power, enough to spill it. I would probably want my keeper to be doing better with that, to be honest. But fair play with Barrie following up again. Not something that we've seen. I don't imagine.
Yeah.
Lawrence and Dessers combo, we would really be in that sort of the same position. So yeah, a bit of an example of how things can change despite it being two players playing up there. So yeah, the Jeffy thing, I'm not too sure. I don't remember screaming at the game to get Ridvan on at left back. I think I was more looking to get a bit more pace up front, to be honest. At that point, so
Yeah, yeah.
I was hoping he would come on maybe a little bit further forward potentially, but yeah, I'm not sure on that one.
I just wonder whether because you're right, Ridvan obviously has the mistake for the third goal alongside Raskin, which is one occasion where Rangers don't jump as a team. But I just wonder whether there was an opportunity to be a little bit more proactive. And it's not that Ridvan would have been necessarily even better defensively, because Jeffy, I think, in the first half was good defensively. It's
Yeah.
just if you're Celtic in the dressing room at half time, and you've already been poor and you already want to lift your levels, you're looking at that and saying our best player who hasn't played well in that first half is on the right wing. Their left back has just got booked. That's
Yeah.
the target for the
No,
first
that's
15
fair.
minutes. But no, I do think it's a bit revisionist. So I'm saying that as a caveat. Right, let's talk about Rangers attacking into space if we must. I remember tweeting Adam. I think it was the halftime of the 1-0 win away at St Johnstone that I thought Rangers' performance was better, and it was met with gnashing of teeth, understandably so.
No, surely,
Yeah,
surely not.
understandably, maybe I didn't word it very well, but what I was trying to say was I thought they spent more time in the opposition final third. And if you remember that game, they didn't create a ton, but I believe, I can't remember the stat off the top of my head, but they managed like double the number of passes in the opposition final third compared to previous games. Their issue was when they got into the final third, the Jeffy's crosses weren't great, or the runs into the box weren't great, and bar that
Mhm.
moment where Bayrami missed a chance at the front post, it was all a bit clunky. I think if you've got one big criticism of Rangers at the moment, it is how they attack into space and their decision making, and where they shoot from. And you could take this back to the Spurs game as well, because they worked some brilliant positions in the Tottenham game, and I think we're too trigger happy. Now, again, the caveat: this is a front four that's not played together. This is a front four that's still missing an out and out pacey winger like an Oscar Cortez who gives you something different on that far side. Or if it's Igaman and Danilo and Bayrami and Cherney, then I think it gives you a bit more. But the first thing that came to mind when we have to think about this 4v1, Adam, was this 3v1, where Rangers also didn't get a shot off against Nice. I don't think it's coincidental. And again, from a manager's point of view, whose fault is this? The players? Is it about the patterns that they play in the final third? Because I don't think you can say yet. If you look at that third goal that Celtic score, where again there's the foul, but Engels knows when he's in that position, rather than trying to play as close as possible to goal, he wants to cut it back as a rehearsed rhythm. It's something that you see all the top teams do. When you contrast that to this image, is it fair to be critical that Rangers are still too erratic in the final third, and that extends to the number of times they shoot from distance as well, which we'll look at?
I think so. And again, I come back to a point I made earlier here. There's two issues here for me. The first one is this pass. I
Yeah.
think you have to go. You have to go with who's closer to goal. And in this case, it would be over to Cherney for me, 100%. It's also going to be on his left foot as well, which we know he favours. But even after this point, and this potentially for me is more of an issue because of the context of the two players. Igaman ran his heart out against Spurs, hasn't played a lot of football, has only come in, first cup final for us,
Yeah.
first couple of weeks in Europe, all that sort of jazz. You can kind of forgive one of those things. I personally think, even though when this happens, I don't know if we've got the still or you've got the gif or not, but
I've not got the next one yet. Is it
when
Bayrami
yeah,
not lifting it?
when not even that, I don't think
Uh,
it's just before he's even shaping to shoot or
yeah.
before he's even ready to make a decision. Karavik is in the air. He's gone.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
sliding. He's sliding. I personally think a player of that, and remember what I was saying earlier on. You're bringing in these players for their supposed proven quality in key moments. You're spending £4 million on a guy who has played international football, who's played in Serie A for a vast number of years, I don't think it's too much to ask to just look up and see what that defender has committed himself. I'm going to
Yeah,
stop. What Eggman did or didn't do for the first goal, whether it was a rollback of the
yeah,
ball, I don't think that's a big issue. Even just stopping and pausing, and then you've got two players careering into goal that you can just roll the ball over to. It might seem, oh yeah, but in the time, if you watch it back, Carter Vickers is in the air before Bayrami's ball is even anywhere near hitting.
mm,
He's anywhere near hitting the ball. So yeah, great defending because he hits the right arm. But I just think even this point, I would have passed. I would have wanted the striker to pass to Cherny 100%. But then when Bayrami's a lot closer in, I think he can do a lot better. There's two or three different options he could have taken there for my money. Again, might be revisionist, might be hindsight, but
yeah.
I didn't think that at the time.
Yeah, and very similar to that Nice moment where it's the ball should be to Cherney because it's against the defender's body shape. And it's again, you're right. It's not as if we're sitting here saying, "Oh, these guys can't pick a pass." Of course, I agree with what you're saying, but the theme is what is underneath that. Why have we seen
Yeah,
this image and this image in a few weeks' time? And what I would say, Adam, is again, it's a little bit of a byproduct of Rangers are. Whether Clement is encouraging it or not, the propensity with which they shoot from range.
yeah,
Also, it comes into the fact that this is a front four that hasn't, if you compare it to the Celtic front six, even with subs, the roles are so defined,
yeah.
the relationships are structured, they've been
Yeah,
there
I think
for a
I
while.
think to answer, and we've seen it in Malmo as well. We've seen this in these games where
True. Yeah.
we've seen in these games where we don't have as much of the ball. We are playing more direct. We're going to see space opening up. We'll see these situations because of that. I think so. It's a byproduct of that, and I don't think it's a bad thing. It's a 4-on-1 or a 3-on-1 in these type of games is a good thing for us. It's just for me comes back to if that is the plan, then great. But when the time comes, the players need to execute and they need to have the quality. If the attack is
Yeah.
built on that and then they fail at that point, then that's on that player specifically in my mind. And it's Malmo, what Dessers went over the top, Casemiro went over the top, Tierney went over
Yeah.
the top. Um, those are technical errors. I don't think the tactics were wrong there because they got them into pretty good positions with limited
Yeah.
defenders there. It's the execution piece, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a few stills here of just players taking shots or crosses when. So the red is what could be another pass, just a suggested idea. And I thought this was, so this is Tavernier crossing when there's maybe that pass down the side to Barami. And again, we'll caveat this with saying that you could, if football would be easy if you could pause it and do this after every single action. So it's not deemed as a individual criticism, but more looking as well at is this a pattern? Um, a few shot, Eggman shooting from a few silly positions, a little bit of a byproduct again of the fact that he's just coming into the team. He's still learning. He's still young. This one was from Bayrami. I thought was a poor decision, Adam, because he has two
That's the
players on
worst
the
way
outside.
for me, yeah.
Yeah, and again, Eggman. This is probably although Rangers don't have a 3v1 overload here. Churning Eggman may be guilty of making similar runs. Got a couple more examples here. This is just a Chefty cross, where again I think Rangers have a habit of trying to cross closer to goal as opposed to crossing into this space ahead of the defence, which is what you'll see. I think the top teams do a lot. And this was, I thought this was the worst one of the day, where this is another moment that Rangers pressing creates. Clement
Yep.
structure off the ball. I think Balogun intercepts it off of Kyogo in this situation. And I think Eggman's run's fine here because he's trying to hold
Yep.
trying to hold
Definitely.
the line, and it's actually what we remember we spoke about it earlier, where the lesser of two evils, if you allow a Celtic centre back to step onto the game and they do lose the ball, this is what has happened there. I think with Trusty, but Balogun didn't play that pass, so I think it's fair to say that is a pattern, and I'm sure Clement will be watching back that game, looking at all these moments, and he'll be frustrated because he'll say the structure's created this, the players aren't carrying it out. I think it's somewhere in between. I think it's definitely a technique thing, but I also think the Bayrami one's the biggest one for me, Adam. If I go to it
Yeah.
here, where
Yeah.
surely a player should never, if you're a coach watching back that game, surely you should be saying never shoot from there. In the right situation, yes, but when you've got the 2 free passes, and so I think it's in between technical and tactical.
Definitely. And I think like I Bayrami for me wasn't wasn't a signing I felt we needed, especially if we
I quite liked him actually at the weekend. Well, we'll disagree agreeably, but you can go first.
yeah. So I mean, not again. If I say it wasn't a sign that we needed, then automatically it means that you hate him and want him to leave, which is really not is not the deal at all. But if the rumblings with Hadji of um, reconciliations, etc., were there before the window, which you have to assume discussions were happening. I don't see the both of them in the same team. I don't enjoy it. I do think Bayrami is probably better than Hadji, but that was a unique situation in terms of the situation and the contract and all that sort of stuff that we had that player there who was on our books. I would have probably preferred that money in the window was spent on um, the centre half or the attacker that we needed, as in a proper pacey winger. That's just my
Yeah,
personal opinion on
yeah,
it.
yeah. Fair,
But
fair.
but I wouldn't, especially when we still had Lawrence at that time, who isn't great, but was scoring goals. Diomande playing up there as well. It feels like we're overloaded with those type of players, and we've not had a left winger for an entire year, outside of a few appearances from Sima. So that's maybe just a kind of bias in my head. But I just come back to that point on Hadji or Bayrami playing on that left hand side. Yes, on the ball they can come in and do good things, but technical quality needs to be there in the box. Your point about doing okay out of possession, it just comes back to that risk reward thing. Doing okay out of possession is fine. If you're not suited to it, it can be worse than doing it badly can be worse than not doing it at all. In that way, so there's a couple of opportunities here that you're flashing up on the screen, and I'm thinking if Hadji was a little bit quicker, or could cover ground a little bit better, he might be in a position to receive a pass. But because he's spending time back defending, he can't get himself forward quick enough to be in the areas to make the difference. So those little minor points for me are why I would personally prefer
Yeah.
to have Kearney on one side, cutting inside, in the way that he does, and then a more direct winger on that side, and then probably for my money, two goal scorers, whether it's a Danilo on the 10, Egeman up front, whether it's Egeman off the left, Danilo in there and Bayrami behind him. I'm not sure, but I definitely don't like both of them in the same team in these type of games because I don't
Mm.
think overall it becomes a huge positive.
Yeah, I don't think it's an ideal situation, and I think the difference with Bayram is he's got legs, and
Yeah,
it's telling for me that Hadji, the little rotation with Hadji and which we spoke about in the video a couple of weeks ago, Hadji and Igaman and Danilo, where Danilo starts at number 10, pushes up, Igaman
yes,
pushes left. I think that actually solves a lot of issues because Clement's not put Hadji in that number 10 spot off the ball. I don't think he puts him on McGregor in the same way because I don't think he's got that
no,
dynamic athleticism that I do think Bayrami has. But then equally, Bayrami's a little bit, I think, more one dimensional on the left wing because Hadji can, as we saw in the Kilmarnock game,
both
assist with
feet,
his
yeah,
right. Yeah,
yeah.
assist, and that's the level of variation that when you've got Lawrence, Dessers, and Bayrami, it's all you know what in Turney, you know what each one of those players wants to do as a defender. And I guess just
There's and it's obviously these things that you can never really prove, but um, if Hadji was by Rami in that instance, just he's about to shape to hit the ball in that 4v1, Hadji's much more likely to roll that onto his left foot probably and send Carter Vickers flying.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's one of those things, isn't it? If you could parachute somebody into the box at this moment, who would you want to hit the ball when football
Yeah,
doesn't really work like that? Yeah.
yeah, that's true. It's true. And also, I think just final point on box attacking is what you're speaking about with individuals improving it. Danilo 1,000,000% improves it. He's much.
100%. Yeah.
He just knows how to. You see him the Kilmarnock goal at home is a perfect example. I think if you watch Danilo's goals and you watch his movement in the box, his finishing at times can be a little bit. Um, I don't think he's the most incisive in the world, although I think he's been good since he came back from injury. His movement's really good. You saw that for the third goal, but the Kilmarnock goal as well, the positions he gets into, the angles he provides for a cutback, I think that's something that Egeman will need to develop in the next couple of years. Right, finally, Adam, because we've went on and people will be sick of us. Just want to touch on corners quickly, what happened. For Rangers, I think it was just improvisation, because if you look at it here, Bayrami and Sterling are in conversation. Diamante's not even watching the ball. I think only two Celtic players know what's happening. Obviously, that allows you to then Diamante to pin angles, and if it didn't feel like a pattern to me. Is that fair? Because Rangers are trying to target the front post with corners, and they've been trying to do different things, but this very much felt like the kind of players taking it upon themselves to attack quickly. And I mentioned this in the morning briefing today. I actually don't, for the style of play that Rangers are playing, for the intensity they're trying to play with, I don't mind that taking corners if throw-ins
No.
quick now and again. It just feels like it's something that you've actually seen Celtic do a lot, very successful,
Yep.
especially on the Postecoglou. As Postecoglou goals against Van Bronckhorst's team, this was like a trademark, taking set pieces quickly while Rangers are complaining to the referees. So I don't know about you, but that's how I saw
Yeah.
that goal.
I have to say, it just annoys me even more that why would you decide at this moment to start why would you decide at this moment to show initiative and start doing these things when we've had several years of right footer hits out swinging corner left foot? I just it never ceases to amaze me that we'll just decide all of a sudden right now we're just going to mix it up. Not at home to Kilmarnock when we're 5-0 up, we'll hit the same corners, we won't do
Yeah,
anything then, but it'll be in this moment. Have to say again, it's one of these things that doesn't really matter too much at all, but the 5-10 minutes before this, I thought Diamandi was absolutely colossal. There
yeah,
was
yeah. It's
there
one of his
was
best performances in a Rangers shirt,
yeah,
100%.
he was great. He was great overall, but I just felt when he scored that goal, I just felt my immediate reaction was he has sort of grabbed that game over the last five
Mm,
10 minutes. Not long after they scored, he was just biting into things. He was winning the ball back, keeping it well, driving the team onwards. And I was delighted at this point that he was the one that got the goal because I felt
yeah,
like again, we're talking about 5 or 10 minutes. It's not exactly, but that sometimes is all it needs. But I just felt there was that moment that I thought he was the best player on the park for that period of time, and it was great that he got the goal, and he took it really well as well. That the touch here that he takes it to
yeah.
beat his man is fantastic. And yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's just so much. He's a much better player. He's a player who kind of needs to play against pressure a little bit. I think he's
definitely.
better. He's much better under pressure in areas where there's a risk of losing the ball than when he's trying to force things. He
Yep,
plays the ball
100%.
ahead of players too much. Like the difference in him playing in a midfield two alongside Raskin in the games like this compared to a midfield three as the highest player on the left, where he can't cut inside against pressure on his left foot. I just
Yep.
think like it's two totally different roles, even though they're both in centre midfield. So I agree with you. And lastly, what happened with the Celtic corners? Again, I don't know if this was planned, if this was just Celtic rushing it. If we don't know that detail. I'll go to the first half first. Rangers had an 8v4 in the box. And I know it's a bit cloudy there, but people can click on the link below. I should say all this is if you want more Rangers tactics after 45 minutes of it, you can
Mm-hmm.
read it on the website. But you had Igaman and Cherney as the short options, Adam, and you had McGregor and Taylor kind of out of picture, but they're narrower towards the right hand side of the box. Hatati's free at the edge, but you'd bank on the fact that if the ball gets to him because he's quite far away, you've got an 8v4 in the box, someone can get out to block him, right? The
Yeah.
difference in the second half, again, whether planned or sporadic, was that Cherney and Igaman kind of stayed in, they're kind of in a similar position, but Kuhn's moved higher, Taylor and McGregor have both moved higher, Hatati's out shot, he's still deep, but it felt as if whether it was a poor Bernardo cross, the outswinger, whether it was intentional, I don't know. From that position, there's still a deflection on the ball that stops Butland from getting to it. But that's how I saw the corner as well. I don't know if it's unfortunate. I don't know if Celtic have seen something at half time and then told Taylor and McGregor to move narrower. Is it Igaman's fault? It's hard to point blame because we don't know all the circumstances, but just one of these other variables in a game full of them, really, I'd say.
Yeah, so I'm not a big set piece person. I have to say, I know there's other people that take more interest in it.
Watch
I
the
get
wins
it's
like me.
yeah, I get it's an important part of the game, but it's not something I've really spent a lot of time analysing, looking at. If I'm brutally honest, but looking at it the way that it is here, um, and I get it's zonal versus man marking, but
Yeah.
that to me isn't ideal because you've got three
No.
or four Celtic players in the box, and you've got by virtue of the extra man, you've got at least two Rangers players that are doing nothing. They're not on
Yeah.
posts. They're covering nothing, and therefore you see three Celtic players outside the box. That it's just simple maths. Most corners get cleared. That is how most corners get cleared. and most of them are probably going to get cleared out the way. If you've got 3 players standing there to shoot versus 1, I feel like that increases your chances dramatically. That being said, I think Igaman probably could be a bit sharper when the ball comes out and probably could deal with it. Once Taylor hits it, I can't blame Raskin. Yeah, Proper was probably going to clear it. That's just the lottery of it. But that's why it's a gamble. The second ball is won by Celtic, and they have that shot because they've got the men there. So yeah, if I'm being fussy, again, from a completely novice point of view, it doesn't seem like the best setup to have 50% more players in the box than your opposition when they've got 3 players outside the box compared to your 1. So that's the only thing I would say about that. But even with that, I think Igaman probably could have blocked that a bit better.
Yes, Igaman or could, like, I agree. Like, you look at those 8 Rangers players in the box, and they're probably like, I think one of the big things that's focused on set pieces is like, how can you cover the biggest zone possible, especially if you're attacking, and defensively, then their Rangers aren't spread out enough. But then again, the corner's taken quickly. So then, would they have set up differently, like Celtic defensively for Rangers goal where Diomande scores? So nature of the game again.
Yeah, no, you never can tell what's a set piece routine and what's just a off the cuff thing. Like you said, that's they feel like a little bit of a lottery sometimes, particularly the way that Rangers do them.
In particular in that game, right? I think we'll leave it there. We've spoken on enough. A reminder to people: if you want to get videos like this early, firstly, subscribe to the website. Will always be first in written piece, and secondly, become a member to the Rangers Review YouTube channel. You'll get 3 to 5 extra videos early every single week, alongside other member bonuses. You need to sign up on a desktop. But we'll be back, I don't know, some point over the Christmas period, Adam, to talk some Rangers tactics.
If you can find me in a rare moment of sobriety, I will be here to help. Yep.
Or not. Do some set-piece analysis after a glass of wine. But until then, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking with us. Hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe and support the Rangers Review for more content like this. And we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.